One of the things you always hear about with Ohio State quarterbacks is how many of them bust out and how many of them just don't get it done at the NFL level, which is interesting when you consider, it's not like Alabama's quarterback history is all that great, but you don't seem to hear the same criticism towards a Bryce Young as maybe you would like a CJ Stroud. Am I wrong? No, I'm not wrong here. Like, that is true. But it is what it is. But when I look at this year's quarterback class, to me, the guy that strikes me as maybe not having the highest pure upside as a pocket passer, but being truly the most NFL projectable, NFL ready as a pocket passer, is CJ Stroud from Ohio State. I really enjoyed doing a deeper dive on CJ Stroud, studying him, and, I came away impressed. Perhaps a little bit more than I expected I was going to, based off of some of the things I would hear throughout the season where people would be questioning, like, his feet and his arm strength. And I think some of those criticisms were kind of unfounded when I went back and watched him. So let me talk a little bit more about CJ Stroud, what stood out to me in the positives, what are some of the weaknesses or concerns I have about his game, and then let me tell you why I think he's the most NFL-ready pocket passer in this year's draft. You look at CJ Stroud, he's close to the prototype size for this position, and he's got large hands, which you would think would help you in terms of ball security if you're in less than ideal conditions, playing outdoors in December and January. You don't have to worry maybe so much about the fumble history with him, although he had a moment or two at Ohio State where he would put the ball on the ground. But generally, he's got big hands, so he's able to control the ball easily. Prototype size for the position, so you feel confident physically that he could hold up. He has enough arm strength to make all the required NFL throws. Like, when I would see people throughout the season, I would see some criticisms of his arm. And yeah, it's not like Mahomes or Josh Allen or Justin Herbert level, but it's certainly a stronger arm than a guy like Joe Burrow. It's a stronger arm to me than Trevor Lawrence, in my opinion. Certainly a stronger arm than Tua. So I thought the criticism of CJ Stroud's arm strength that I had seen over the past several months was interesting and wasn't really accurate. I saw a guy that could easily make all the required NFL throws. And on top of that, he was able to hit his receivers in the right spot, leading them, hitting them in stride. Like, we talk about NFL throws, and sometimes you can get caught up in the big-time spectacular play and say, that's an NFL throw. And Bryce Young certainly has those. Frankly, all the top quarterback prospects in this year's draft class have those, like, special NFL throws. But when I looked at the guy out of the big-name quarterbacks in this year's draft class that hit the most consistently solid NFL throws, it was CJ Stroud. Not always going to be the wow guy, but when you look at to all different levels and all different areas of the field, who could most consistently make those throws at an NFL-type level, to me it was Stroud. It wasn't Young, it wasn't Levis, it wasn't Richardson, it was Stroud. I also like his ability to throw with touch, differing velocities as needed to all three levels. Similar to Bryce Young, thought he was really advanced as a college quarterback in terms of being able to seed the field, being able to read defenses before the snap, anticipate what the defensive look he's going to get is, be able to go through his progressions, and then having a feel for where that hot read is. Like, always felt like he had a good feel and command for where he was and what situation he was facing in 2022. He's able to buy some time in the pocket with his feet or by scrambling. He's not a great athlete in terms of what he demonstrates on the field. Like, it doesn't certainly come as natural to him. You look at him and you feel he's a bit more heavy-footed than a Bryce Young, and that's a fair comparison. He is more heavily footed, at least in the way he plays, his play style. But he can buy time with his feet. You love the guy, sure, that is able to get first downs with his feet. And I don't think CJ Stroud is incapable of that. He just might not be able to run for as many yards as some of the other big-name quarterbacks in this class. Certainly Richardson, Young, Levis, right? But, sometimes that could be overrated too. You want the guy that can buy time with his feet, and every once in a while maybe they can catch you and surprise you and get a first down with their feet, like a Mahomes, like a Burrow. But scrambling is not, running the ball is not the primary part of their game. It is just a complementary piece, right? An important one, but still a complementary piece. And while I'm not saying CJ Stroud has that type of ability, I'm just illustrating that you don't have to be a mad scrambler all the time to be really effective still in the NFL as a quarterback. I also like his feel for anticipating throwing windows and timing his throws properly. You'll see this a number of times as you watch his 2022 film where a receiver is just getting ready to enter their break, just coming out of their break, or hasn't even technically hit their break yet, and he's already throwing it to a spot in the zone. Really, really like that because that's something you have to be able to do at the NFL. A lot of times if you're waiting until you see the guy open, it is too late by that point. So in terms of his abilities as a pocket passer, I came away really, really impressed with his game. Some of the weaknesses that stood out, as I referenced a moment ago, he can move a little, but he's not a great threat to get yards with his feet. That's not a major pause for concern. But if you had somebody that was pretty similar to him as a pocket passer in this draft and they were a much better athlete with their feet, similar arm strength, you might say, I might take that guy over CJ Stroud. He'll sometimes struggle to react to pressure in his face, and not so much in the Bryce Young sense of where he loses a lot of velocity and accuracy and touch with pressure in his face because he can't move his feet very well with that pressure. I don't want to say freezes, but like he can be a little slow to react sometimes. He has moments as well where he doesn't feel that edge pressure, doesn't feel the blitzer coming, and every once in a while that can happen, right? Even for the best of NFL quarterbacks, they'll get fooled sometimes. Sometimes they won't feel that pressure. I'd like to see him be a little bit better at feeling it, but it is what it is. Like for a college guy, that's a weakness that you would expect. He sometimes will pass up the easier throw for a throw into a tighter window, which he was able to get away with at Ohio State, especially when you look at, in general, the offensive line that was protecting him, but also the great talent that he had outside of wide receiver the past couple of years. He might not be as able to get away with that at the NFL level because the throwing windows are going to be smaller. And Stroud, while he has good arm strength, he does not have like Mahomes, Allen, Herbert type of arm strength, right? No, he certainly does not. So you got to be a little careful there. It could lead to some problems, some bad interceptions for thinking something is available when it really isn't. He also has some moments where he doesn't recognize the underneath linebacker in zone. He's not unique in this. A lot of young quarterbacks can struggle with this, especially a linebacker that starts off at the line of scrimmage. It looks like he's coming, but then drops off. He could struggle to read those. He had a couple of batted balls and picks that came as a result of that. So something that he will certainly have to get better at. But even as you listen to the weaknesses, there's no like glaring like, oh my God, this guy absolutely cannot make it in the NFL type of trait. To me, again, as I mentioned, CJ Stroud is the most NFL-ready pocket passer in this class. I think his combination of arm strength and overall accuracy really bode well for his NFL chances. He's got advanced feel for the position, good instincts and feel for the game, command of the offense, a presence. Really, really like that about him. I would say, I would like to see him I think his athleticism could be used a little bit more. It's a little bit better than maybe he's given credit for. I would like to see him incorporate that a little bit more into this game. Not calling for him to be a big-time scrambler, but there are going to be times in the NFL where you're going to be able to need to extend plays with your feet, and I'd like to see him do that a little bit more. I have some mild concerns about how he would fare behind a mid or less than mid offensive line, right? I could say the same thing about Bryce Young. I could say the same thing about any of these quarterbacks. But I think when you compare his athleticism compared to some of the other big names in this class like Young and Levis and Richardson, I'd be most concerned about putting CJ Stroud behind a weak offensive line because that could be a recipe for some problems. And the other thing I'll call out is you look at CJ Stroud, there are a lot of solid things about his game. I don't see anything that is so star-spangled awesome that makes me say, man, I got to pound the table like this guy is going to be elite. Like this guy has Mahomes level ability or even Burrow ability, who I was slightly wrong about in the draft, right? I thought he was good. I put Herbert over him, and frankly, I still would. But I do look at CJ Stroud and say, this is a guy that if I was drafting number 1 overall, I'd feel the safest about taking number 1 overall, and at a minimum, being able to be like a top 8 to 12 quarterback in the National Football League. That might be his upside. He might not have some of the additional upside of a Levis or a Richardson, but his floor, and I hate talking about floors and ceilings here, like we're fucking doing interior decorating and remodeling of a house or something. But when it comes to the draft, that stuff matters. There's a risk reward here. There's a very little risk with CJ Stroud, in my opinion. There's still quite a bit of reward, just not as much risk or reward variance or potential as some of the other guys in this class. When I was looking to who to compare him to, I thought, Jared Goff with a little bit better feet felt like a good comparison. Goff, who I've called goof before, and he's had some kind of years. He's also had some pretty good years in the NFL, too. Like a lot of teams wish they had a Jared Goff as their starting quarterback. He might not be elite. But honestly, like if you look at his performance in 2022, you'd point to Goff somewhere in that 10 to 12 category, I would think, in terms of NFL starting quarterbacks. I think he's a little bit better than Jared Goff as a prospect, but I can certainly see the similarities there. It's not a perfect comparison, but it's a pretty appropriate one to me. But in this draft, I look at CJ Stroud as a top 5 talent. Whether or not he's quarterback 1 or not, you're just going to have to stick around and see. But I really came away impressed with him and felt more confident about his chances to be a high-level NFL starter than I did a Bryce Young. I'm saying Bryce Young can't be a really good NFL starter. I just think that CJ Stroud as a prospect is better.